E buonasera a tutti e benvenuti a questa nuova puntata in anteprima del The Flywheel Show. Ancora non siamo nello show vero e proprio, però stiamo piano piano lanciandoci con tutto un programma di interviste. Questa sera siamo con Kit Morris, che è l'editor di Lev Gleason. Hello Kit, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure also for the people that is watching you in Italy. So we will talk in English. Don't worry, because there are subtitles then that will be added later on. So we are live, but then everybody will be able to understand us also if we are speaking in English. So how things are going in Canada now with COVID is a question quite common right now, I believe.
Yeah. I think we're opening back up. At least we're scheduled to be pretty open soon, although our numbers are rising with the Delta variant. So it's a bit, we're starting vaccine passporting soon. So we'll all be getting vaccine passports. I think like October is when they're saying that should happen. So, I mean, it is what it is. There's not much we can do. We just, get our vaccines, try to limit contact with people indoors, do our best, Pretty much everyone's still working remotely, working from home. So, that's kind of all you can ask for.
Yeah, it's a common question that I do for all of our guests. So my first things to understand is how things changed for people that are creating things at home normally. It is changed the way you're working, because I suppose that when you're working by yourself, creating by yourself. So I suppose that on this side, nothing really changed.
Yeah, workflow wise, it hasn't really affected that much. Although production side, the paper production in North America has had a bit of a hiccup. Printers are having trouble sometimes. We've seen that, and I don't think that gets broadcast a lot, out to the regular fans. It's like paper costs rising as it's in transport to the printer. It's like, oh, okay, we got a quote for that, but they're only good for so long, and you have to readjust. So we've been in a, you have to adjust as the world changes, and COVID definitely made us adjust and switch a lot of what we were trying to do and refocus. And so a lot of that's working with our printing partners, working with our distributor to make sure that we're able to weather those quick changes. So
So we are talking this evening because on this month, Leviathan Labs, which is an Italy publishing house, is about to publish its first volume of Captain Canuck. First of all, the correct pronunciation is Captain Canuck or Canuck?
Canuck.
Canuck. Okay, thank you, because that was something we were wondering on live a couple of days ago. So it's the first question. I've seen it's really an historical character in Canada, isn't it?
Yes. It was originally created in 1975. It has lived on throughout its original 14-issue, 15 with the summer special run. We recently released a 15th issue that was originally drawn. We had it was colored, and that has finally been produced for like the first time, So there was I think a 16-issue original run of the character between the 70s and 80s. And then the characters lived on a few different reboots. There was a Reborn reboot in the 90s, a Legacy reboot. None of those kind of finished. They kind of were some starts of new stories with a new Captain Canuck. And then in 2004, the Langlois brothers did a new Captain Canuck series with a different Captain Canuck on the west coast of Canada. So a totally different take on it with a new Canuck and a really indie sort of vibe to it. And I love that series. And that was about the last time that there was something really done with the character. So, you had a total of 20 some odd issues before the reboot in 2015. And now we've been producing new work in a new universe, updated for modern sensibilities, contemporary readers. And that's been going strong since 2015. Obviously, with any small publisher, there are plenty of breaks that you take in between doing new volumes as you need time to sell that one, get it to the distributor, put it into the market. Very few publishers can take a book from issue 1 to issue 200 now monthly. Yeah. Marvel and DC don't even really do that anymore too much, except for Spider-Man and Batman and such. So yeah, it's just been a slow and steady progress of the character, continuing his ascent back into global relevance, hopefully.
It's quite interesting because I've read a little. I find some news about Captain Canuck in the network because, of course, the oldest incarnation were never published in Italy. This is the first time that we have the character in Italy. It was quite interesting to understand that actually the first incarnation was set in the future, and the future for the 75 was 93. So it was really funny about this.
Yeah, that's actually the original issues. It's the more I go back and look at the original issues for inspiration of, when a writer's asking me, like, where do you want to go with this? I'll go back to the original issues and I'll pick out little things that I think need to be explored more or can be referenced to in ways or can be homaged in ways. And the whole concept of how in 1981 or 75, he gets transported into a 1993 that's so futuristic. And now we're 2021 and, we're trying to figure out if we can have more electric cars. We haven't really progressed where we need to be. So yeah, it's interesting to look back at, even older DC books or Marvel books where they're talking about the future. Yeah, it's kind of sad to look back and say, whoa, we're not there yet. We're not in that perfect utopia solving energy crisis yet. But yeah, that's where they thought, like, originally the character was believed to be something that could be, a future that you would want to live in. And especially at the time it was written in Canada, Canada being much like a forgotten North American child in compared to America, right? It was a way for the book to say, in the future, Canada is relevant. We're relevant, and that was something. I'm not Canadian. I immigrated to Canada in 2006. So for me, it was interesting to see that there was so much care about that sort of storytelling culture here. And that's really what I've tried to always say anytime I'm on a panel, anytime I'm talking about, like, what does the company do or what are we trying to say with our books? We're trying to export culture. And that doesn't mean we're trying to export maple syrup and Canadian bacon and Tim Hortons coffee all over the world. It means we're trying to export a point of view. And I think that's what a lot of people who, when we talk about who's your favorite Canadian superhero, they'll immediately say, oh, Wolverine, Deadpool,
Yeah.
But truthfully, the point of view, the storytelling, but it's what characters are influenced by. That's really where the Captain Canuck storytelling is exporting. It's more than just a flag. It's a point of view. It's a way that the stories that we tell with Captain Canuck are shared with the world. It's not through an American lens. And our company, as it has grown and evolved and changed, and new people have come in to, help build the brand internationally. Lev Gleason is really a publishing house, and its imprint Comic House, which does all of our superhero books like Captain Canuck, is really focused on telling stories and telling stories with an international base of characters, a world base of characters, from a point of view of people that share a vision of how storytelling should be, share a vision of what we kind of want to see in fiction. And that's important. It's not one vision. It's to find people that have something to say in their books, that have something that's important to them. Just as it was important to Richard Cumley and George Freeman when they were working on the original Captain Canuck. There's so much that they're saying in those books. And that's what we want to keep moving forward with both Canuck and all of our other books.
You know, it's interesting because you say something about exporting the way of your storytelling, and it was quite interesting because I was reading the first numbers in the Italian version, and it's quite different the way it is written compared to what the Americans are doing right now, because more or less reading Marvel or DC Comics, or you have stories that are very strongly inspired by TV or cinema series, or otherwise you have something that it's much more like an Alan Moore comics, so very harsh, very dark. Instead, reading Captain Canuck is like welcoming me home, because I grew up reading comic book from superheroes. So you have a not decompressed story. So there is a lot of dialogues, a lot of information. The actions is serious, but not 100% serious. So there are a lot of things that are completely different from what we are looking at and finding in the market in the moment.
Exactly right. I find now that there's kind of two dominant superhero books that hit the market. There is your big two, Marvel and DC, which airs on the side of very complex, very American political centric, and very much it attempts to be realistic in both setting and in its dialogue, and complex in its storytelling, dark, gritty. You know, it likes to be on the street in a way. You know, it likes to show what's happening with real people in the real world, but it has a very sometimes gloomy outcome to it, or gloomy look to it. And then you have the other one, which is the books that always tend to be like, this is a story that basically like it came out in 1981, and it's super cheesy or goofy, or it's a throwback to this Bronze Age or this Copper Age of comics or something, where all the characters have puns to them, or, you know, and it really plays up the comic book aesthetic, the campy aesthetic of comics. And there's not really a whole lot being said there beyond it's a comic book that's meta referencing other comic books. Our big goal, and that's not to say either of those are bad. I read both of them. I read everything that I can.
Of course.
But what we try to do, where we try to be a bit different, and I think you saw that in Captain Canuck, we try to be in the middle of that and make sure that it's a fun, exciting comic book with action, with interesting characters that are fun looking and fun to get into their world, but also tell a story that can progress forward, that has a larger universe to it, that connects with other things, that also isn't playing for gags necessarily, or playing for jokes all the time. It's something that has jokes, has humor, has puns, but is very much complex in its meta storytelling. So we really try to fit our way in there. My inspiration behind comics, I'm definitely a fan of the early 2000 DC, like the Paul Levitz era of DC. You know, it was kind of like we had one universe, and the characters were the characters in their own title, and they crossed over, and everything kind of mattered, but you didn't need to read everything. And I think that was, to me, a really good era of books for people to access and to really get into. So that's really what we've tried to emulate a lot, is to pay homage to the books that we have in our archives collection, like Captain Canuck, the early Lev Gleason works, and push that stuff into a modern contemporary setting, and stick with what makes superhero books great, in that there is a continuous story. There is a larger story to be had inside all of these smaller adventures. That's really what it's about. And as I've always said to any writer, continuity is not story. It's not a plot. If you're going to rewrite your universe, if you're going to have a world-changing event, that can be a byproduct of a plot. But explaining how your universe is constructed every 5 years, page over page over page, and trying to explain the minutia of how, that's not a story. That's an infographic. And to me, that's not really good storytelling. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a better person than anyone that likes that. That's great if you enjoy it. To me, I just want people to read books and enjoy reading them and getting to the next chapter and the next chapter. And I don't want people to have to worry about, how does this book fit into that one? And, what does this mean? And if the world, it's not that complicated. It's just keep reading forward. Why is manga so popular? Start at chapter 1. That's kind of how our universe is. There's a start to every season. Keep going. And there's a reading order in the back of the books. There's reading orders on our website. It's pretty straightforward. I want to make it easy for people. It should be easy. They were easy when I was growing up, and my first issues of books were like 78, 300 and something of Detective Comics, or issue 400 of Batman. I mean, I don't really remember, but they were not number ones.
Sure.
But they were easy to get into. The writers filled you in on what you missed. They said it didn't matter what happened before, because this is the mystery we're solving today. This is the criminal that's on the loose. This is what's happening now. And I've always thought about that. I've always thought that that's how comics should be. It should be all about going forward. The adventures that happen to superheroes in the past, just like what happens to all of us in our past, they inform our decisions today, but we don't constantly relive every moment that we've had previous. They're just inform our character. I'm talking to you right now. That's where we are in this story. So that's where I feel comics are missing a lot of. It's too concerned about how this connects back. What are we doing now? What is this issue about? So
that's because the fandom has too many ways to express themselves compared to the past. So we can talk too much compared to when there were authors and fans.
Yeah.
So,
you just had a letters column before, right? It was just, you'd have to write the editor and complain if you didn't like the artist or something, or didn't like the storyline. And I think they would always tell you, it's like, well, if you don't like it, like next issue you might like, and I think that's something I've always kept to heart, is that, like, if you don't like this season that we're doing, the next one you may like, because every story is a new adventure and they build on each other. But you're not going to miss anything if you pick up, if someone picks up season 2 of Captain Canuck, you're not going to miss anything. We'll fill you in. So comics, they should be easy, and hopefully we're doing our best to make them accessible.
I think that the most difficult part in writing something is making it simpler, even adding complex meanings behind. So giving to the readers different way to read the comic, in a way that if you're 8-year-old, you can understand something. If you have 44 like me, you can understand something else.
Yeah, and we're not. I mean, no editor is perfect. No writer is perfect. I think anyone that says that they've mastered it is fooling you. It's all a learning process, and every collaboration with every writer is different. Every collaboration with every artist is different. And again, comics are a very collaborative medium, especially in North American superhero comics. It's extremely collaborative. And the artists are really the storytellers that are putting the actual meat of the story out there for you. So there's levels of adaptation in comics, which I think a lot of people don't fully grasp, as to why did this end up this way if they don't like something, or why did they love this so much? And then they pick up like the next thing that the one creator did, and like, well, this isn't as good as that. It's all collaborative, and sometimes you strike gold, and sometimes you get somebody who doesn't need any collaborators, and they want to write it and draw it, and they want to do everything, and it's genius. And there's no right way to make comics, but it's definitely not always a solo adventure when it's being done, and that's a tough thing to balance. But it's also, when you do it well, or you get something where somebody says, I liked it, it's the greatest compliment, because it's a lot of hard work. So if somebody enjoys your book, it's extremely gratifying.
Yeah, can imagine this. So how will be set up the story for Captain Canuck? Do you have a fixed team, or every story arc will have different artists and writers?
So the first couple seasons have the same writer, and mostly have the same artist, some different inkers here and there, but mostly it was Kalman, Andrzejowski, and Leonard Kirk that were on the first three arcs of Captain Canuck. And then season 0 and season 4, which came out. Season 0 was a flashback tale, and season 4 was the big invasion. That was Jay Baruchel, who penned a lot of that, with Kalman on some parts and Van Jensen on some other parts. So it's all of that was really collaborative. I mean, none of that comes from my brain at all. It's from extremely talented writers and artists that I just happen to put their work together and get it to a printer. It has a very consistent vision throughout it. And then, of course, at the end of season 4, or the 5th volume of Captain Canuck's saga, something very dramatic happens. And then season 5 picks up with Hoche Anderson writing. And Hoche has a very different story that he's telling, which is a much different conceptual and visual tale. And he's bringing to it where the previous creators were really coming from a big 2 background, Marvel and DC. Hoche was coming in from a Fantagraphics indie side of the industry. He does a book called Godhead, which is amazing, and he does really great characterization, intricate mystery plotting. If you blink, you miss it kind of stuff. And for season 5, this new kind of tale that we were telling, that is really built in how the world is now after season 4, the complexities of it. He really knocked it out of the park. It's a heady book for sure. I mean, it's a thinker. But that was great working with him on that as well.
So looking forward for that. But in the meanwhile, Captain Canuck will be, he is inserted in a most complex pantheon. Let's say there are a number of other heroes, other characters that have different books that are all mixed up together. So can you tell us something about Captain Canuck universe, the chapter verse?
Yeah. So the Comic House universe that we have through the Comic House imprint at Lev Gleason is basically Captain Canuck fits into your standard superhero fare. Then we have books like Phantoma that we've done, which is kind of a magical horror sort of book. We have a book called Freelance, which is basically what I've always kind of called is like a DuckTales sort of book, but with humans. It is built on the way I pitch it is my love of the Carl Barks and Don Rosa Duck stories. I have a full collection of it.
Oh, wow.
And I am just the biggest fan of anything that is a group of found friends, found family that adventures and finds mysteries and goes to fantastic places. The writer of that book, the first season was Jim Zub with Andrew Wheeler. Andrew Wheeler is writing the second arc, which is currently being released in our Lev Gleason Presents comic. It is a fantastical story of high adventure. Then we've had the Northgard series, which we published, which was a little bit more of a international spy sort of thriller, and a more grounded, down-to-earth series. The current books that are releasing now, Silver Streak by Keith Champagne and Stefan Tosheff, is your superhero flair type of book. It encompasses that sort of area, but it definitely has a much more fun vibe to it. It's really about characters growing with themselves and enjoying discovering their powers and discovering who they are. And beyond that, Kenny Porter and Iñaki Azpiazu have done The Greatest Name in Comics, Daredevil, for us, which is also in the Lev Gleason Presents book. And that is a young guy who decides to take all of his skills as a former movie stuntman, Daredevil, and take that sort of skill set and apply that to saving his neighborhood, to saving his town. And that takes place in Sydney, Australia. So there's a lot of series that we have. We have the new Crime Buster series coming up featuring Chuck Chandler, which is basically he's the greatest teen detective. He just doesn't really know it yet. And, he's out there trying to track down a mystery, and he runs into some other people that can help him out. There's West Coast Canuck, which features the David Semple Canuck character. It also features spinning out of the Captain Canuck series, Steeltown Hammer, who goes through a journey of change in that book, as well as meeting Kip Keen, who's Canada's foremost Mountie adventurer. And they're on a train. It's very much Murder on the Orient Express, but with superheroes. So that was a great series that we were lucky enough to get done, and that's coming out as well, and that's been wrapped. So there's a lot of stuff that's been for a few years. COVID really, we had a lot of plans in 2019 on what was coming out starting in 2020, and boy, we had to really shift gears, and that's why our if you're in a place that gets single issue comic books through Diamond, our Lev Gleason Presents series is a monthly comic that comes out. It's 8 pages. It features 3 full-length issues, so it's 3 at minimum 20-page stories plus an archive adventure that we restore from our archives, and we get that all to you for $10. So it's a pretty good deal, and you can follow the adventures of the whole universe every single month. You don't need to worry about, what issue did this come of? We put it all in kind of an order for you. You're not going to be left behind.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and it helps the reader. Ideally, with single issues are so expensive to produce in small quantities. They're just really pricey right now. So we found a way that we can kind of give people a distributed single issue every month, and we can give them extra content, and we can give them more content than they would get if they were buying each issue individually. So
it seems like you have a very big quantity of things that will need to be published also in Italy. So it's interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's interesting because now superhero stories more or less are 8 years old. So which are the goals in 2021 to write comic book stories about superheroes? How changed for you the media? How it is difficult to entertain people with people wearing costumes, when there are video games, there are socials, there are many other things that can distract the reader attention.
Yeah. So that's actually something that I think about quite often. Comic books are the comic book themselves. The single issue in America on Wednesday from a store. It is not where it was even several years ago. There are exceptions to everything,
of course,
but the industry itself has changed a lot. And it's not saying it's for the worse or for the better. It's just changed. There is so much content now. And I think our standard comic book stores carry more product than ever before of different genres, of different types of books. And I think that's really the most wonderful thing, is that if you say now, I like to read comics, someone doesn't necessarily immediately think that, oh, you like Spider-Man, I guess. It could be anything. It could be, I read these really great books that Fantagraphics produces or Ad House Books was producing. I'm reading these amazing superhero books from Valiant, or something. Or it can be anything. We have the ability now, especially with the internet, to target audience and to cater to small groups. That it helps. It helps solidify fan bases. However, there is the other side to that, in that if you focus solely on just your small group and catering to that group only, that you do miss out on potentially crossing over into a larger, more popular sale. I think that comics can do something that video games and movies can't. And that is, at its heart, it can provide the reader with art, with viewing physical art. That is to say that movies are art in and of themselves. Video games are art in and of themselves. But the way that certain illustrators, certain artists can compose a page that really makes you sit in and take in that page almost as if it was hanging on a wall in a gallery, is something that is very difficult to replicate in a movie, in a video game. I've played plenty of games that I think are beautiful or art. I think about it more as the whole experience of playing the game, the story of the game, the way it made me feel as a participant in that video game, as I was an active player in it. And in the movies, I think about scenes or shot composition that are gorgeous as a whole, as I view this passively. Comics are strange in that you're a passive viewer of it, but you're actively pushing yourself through the story. You actually have to turn the page. You actually have to read it. It is not given to you. And what, to me, I think the way comics will last forever, the idea of art with words, which has been much longer than just Superman wearing a cape, is that is something where you can find an issue where the whole issue might be bad, but there's one page that's perfect. And I see that a lot now. I especially see that in the nostalgia that some people have for certain eras of comics, where it's like, that series was not good. Like, that no one would ever reread that. But this page was art. This page was amazing. That is something where every time I pick up a comic book and I turn the page, I'm waiting to be blown away by something. And it could happen in any book. That's something I love about comics. It's any artist at any time can make you rethink the medium. I love certain books that I think made me rethink a lot. of comics, obviously, were anything that David Aya did in his Hawkeye run was phenomenal. I've had the pleasure of working with Raoul Allen, and his work changes the way I think about how characters interact with their space, static movement versus fluid movements. There are artists right now coming out of Spain, especially, that have just really changed how I think about comics. Every book has the potential to be a piece of art on its own. So I think that's why comics aren't going anywhere. Just how we consume them might change a bit. How we collect comics, I think, might change a bit. But all of that is, I kind of say, like, I'm not in the collecting business as much. I'm in the storytelling business. My job is to elevate creators and find a pathway for them into distribution to let them tell their stories. That's all I do. So I'm not actually concerned about the health of the secondary collectors market as much as I'm concerned about, if somebody picks this up, are they going to like it? Are they going to be grateful that they spent their hard-earned money on this book? And honestly, that's something that I think everybody is fighting that same battle. They're just really trying to make art and put it out there. Yeah. And that's the most vulnerable you can be, is when you're putting art out in the world. So
it's actually a good point, finding the art even in a single page. Thank you for that. It's very, very interesting. Kit, just one last question, because it's the last question for the show, for every guest of the show. Which are the latest comic book that you have read that you really, really enjoyed much?
Okay, so the current Nightwing run at DC, I'm not going to say the stuff I worked on or what. I think that's kind of selfish, but the things that I'm reading right now that I think are really great are the Nightwing run at DC, and not because I like necessarily. I'm a Teen Titans fan. I'm an old Teen Titans fan. I am not a Barbara Gordon Nightwing fan at all. I think that was very tacked on in the 2000s. So I don't really care so much for where the story's going. But when I say about the art on the book, the art on that book is, to me, that is the destination of where comic book art has been going towards. And it is achieved now. Like, that is the pinnacle to me. I was waiting for somebody to take all of those breadcrumbs from Batman Year One, from Watchmen, from Fraction and Aja's Hawkeye, from Raoul Allen's work on Secret Wars at Valiant. Take all those little breadcrumbs and put it in a DC character, which I love DC books. And they did that. It's beautiful. It plays with color palettes that are modern and contemporary, but uses like halftone shading, and there's like beignet dots and things or whatever. He does everything in that book. He plays with panels. He plays with small moments, big moments, with how to place characters in the setting for drama. It's a masterclass. It's one of the best big two books I've seen in a long time. I don't read everything, but that's the one I'm picking up right now that I'm like, hands down, this book is beautiful. But I will say, if there's an indie book that I'm reading, which I need to go out and pre-order it right now, that I did not publish, it's Night Hunters, Dave Baker, Azarat on the art. I have to read it but Night Hunters by Floating World Comics. That is a book that needs to be read by everybody. Dave is the best writer not working today on big projects that he be probably, but he probably wouldn't do it. Like that's how how much integrity that guy has. I've been lucky enough to chat with him a bunch. You know, he's going to do what he's going to do. He's going to tell the stories that he's going to tell. And Night Hunters, man, is something else. That book is totally, totally rad. So those are two things I would say. And then, of course, anything that comes out from Lev Gleason through Comic House.
Of course.
You know,
that was a given, of course.
Through our imprint New Friday, which does independent creator-owned books, like from a lot of singular voices. The book series Home, which is by the by two brothers, by the Mashad brothers. It's a sci-fi epic where they each take a timeline and they each tell that. It's phenomenal. It's definitely in the bande dessinée realm as far as type of storytelling, but it is beautiful. So, and that's available now. So,
yeah, no, I've seen in the publishing house website there's a lot of things in the Friday books collection because it's very interesting. It's quite different from the chapter verse.
Yeah. So, I mean, Lev Gleason is a full publishing company. We do books through the Lev Gleason library with novels. And then New Friday is an imprint that caters to independent creators that have their own book that want to get it into distribution, that maybe need a little help just to get into distribution. They need help with maybe designing the book, you know, they need help with editing the book with like spell checks and, you know, like little help to proofread. And we provide all of that for them and, you know, print the book and get it into market for them and make sure that people can buy it. That's really, there's nothing more to it than that. It's just trying to help people that I think personally, and my designer that works with me on the project New Friday, it's our kind of baby together that we want to just find cool stuff that maybe didn't have an outlet before and try to get it to market. And then, of course, the Comic House imprint, which is the home to a shared superhero universe that is pretty vast, a few hundred issues in and continuing to grow. And, you know, that's something we're very proud of. You know, it's been continuous since 2015. So that in and of itself is no small feat. It's still kicking. So
it's really, really a good idea. And also it's good because you are giving chance to many new authors to come up and have their book published. So it's good because in a market where there are always the same names, you are creating a new opportunity. So it's something very good.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel that comics should be. There are very few people that make a living in comics. That's just the truth. The truth is very few people pay their rent or their mortgage payment or their car payment solely on comic books. And the very few people that do that can dominate every title. And that's fine. That's how they pay all their bills. But there's plenty of talented people that have their own book that maybe are getting overlooked, you know? And I think for us, it's just about trying to find those people that have a desire to do it. They say, I want to do this, have this story, which is why, you know, if somebody submits a book to say New Friday, you know, I don't Google like how successful their previous book was, or I just read the book for what the book is, you know, and that to me is the best way to try to find stuff that's interesting is, you know, as much as it would be nice if everyone had the same marketing dollars to promote, but sometimes you don't. So you just have to rely on the quality of the work. And, you know, there's quality of work in so many other publishing houses around the world. Like I've always said, like, you don't have to just read like what Marvel and DC are putting out. They put out some great stuff, but there's so many other really, really talented creators at smaller press right now. You know, Ahoy Comics has a lot of great stuff in the States. Scout Comics is doing some amazing stuff right now. There's plenty of Fantagraphics is always putting out amazing stuff. So if you love comics, you know, there's no shortage of extremely talented people that deserve your dollar. You know.
Yeah, the problem is the space in your house to put all the books. But it's I always prefer to have that problem to not have anything to read. So I'm happy to have to fight hard to find a new space for the new comics.
Yeah, one day, I've been secretly working on a way to try to create a digital reader that is that can somehow be better. And one day when the technology is there, I think we'll get something that will make digital feel better to the people that still won't read digital. Because a lot of people still won't read digital. Web comics are web comics. Comics are in books. We need to bridge that gap at some point because it is a space issue. Like at some point you need to sell more books, and at some point, I can see your shelves behind you. At some point, the average comic book fan literally runs out of space. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen, right? And digital is the only way you can really do that. So
it's a good solution, actually.
You have to figure it out somehow.
You have to fight habits because, of course, if you're able to read the books, feel the essence of paper or the smell of paper is different than reading digital. But I guess that with technology, things will improve in the next probably 2 or 3 or 5 years, no more than that.
Yeah.
So, Kit, it's been really, really a pleasure to talk with you. Really, thank you for your time, for the things that you have said. So, let me switch to Italian now. Voglio ricordare a tutti quanti che il primo volume di Captain Canuck sarà pubblicato da Leviathan Labs nei prossimi giorni, quindi mi raccomando andatelo a recuperare. Naturalmente noi ci vediamo prossimamente con le nuove puntate e Kit, thank you again for your time and hope to see you soon on this channel.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Have a great day or a great night over there in Italy. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. Bye. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Cheers.